Good afternoon. Caroline. Hello, Caroline.
Good afternoon.
Yes, this is Clement, one of the interpreters. Would you please assign us as interpreters, please?
Good afternoon, colleagues. My name is Tapiwa Chouka from the African Union Commission. I'll be the moderator for today's session. We're just waiting for a few more people to come on board, and then we can begin. So thank you very much for your patience.
Hello.
Hello, Tapiwa. Tapiwa.
No,
Tapiwa,
it's Elaine. No, it's Elaine for DRC. What about the French interpreter?
Hello, Tapiwa, can you hear me?
Hello, Clement. Yes, I can hear you now.
Yes, we have not yet been assigned as interpreters. Would you please ask the host or co-host to assign us?
Okay, let me get to it just now. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
All right.
Hello, good morning. Hello, good morning.
Bonjour, bonjour. Moi, je parle français. Et donc, je cherche l'interprète français-anglais parce que je suis panéliste.
Bonjour, Allô, bonjour.
Ah, bonjour, monsieur, ça me fait plaisir de vous entendre.
Oui, je suis l'interprète. Maintenant, il faut que l'organisateur nous assigne, en fait, parce qu'on est deux. Il faut qu'il puisse nous assigner comme interprète, ce qui n'est pas encore le cas.
OK, parfait, pas de souci. J'attends.
Merci. Merci, madame.
Good afternoon and good morning once again, colleagues. I just wanted to say that interpreters are still being assigned. So as soon as they're assigned, we'll begin the meeting. We don't want to begin the meeting without any interpretation. Thank you very much. And thank you for your patience once again. If you're not speaking, could you please mute your mic? Thank you very much once again. Good morning or good afternoon, colleagues, depending with where you are. We're having technical issues with assigning interpreters. My sincere apologies, really. As soon as interpreters are assigned, we will begin. My sincere apologies. Good afternoon, colleagues. My name is Tapiwa Cheuka. I'm a Trade Policy Officer in the African Union Commission. I will be your moderator for today. Firstly, I would want to apologize for the delay. We're having technical issues with interpretation, but it seems that it is now available. You can see at the bottom right of your screen, there is a tab written interpretation. You can click for it. You can click on it. You can choose. We only have French and English interpretation. So my apologies again for keeping you waiting. I think without further ado, we'll go straight into the business of the day. This is day 2 of strengthening a series of webinars of strengthening trade policy dialogue. Yesterday was the first day where we had a background from the African Union Commission, head of Trade Division, Charles Chumya, who gave us a background with regards to trade policy within the framework of boosting intra-African trade. And we also had a presentation by the Executive Director of TRALAC, Trudy. Trudy gave us a presentation with regards to the importance of stakeholder engagement. So we would want to thank you for making time to be part of this webinar series and for being patient. So going forward, we have a program lined up today. I think you've managed to receive you've managed to receive the agenda for the day. We have panelists who will be speaking to a number of issues, including digital trade, trade and services, as well as trade facilitation. All this is aimed at trying to see how we can be as inclusive as possible with regards to women entrepreneurs and women producers in trade. So I think without wasting much time, we'll have representatives of ITC She Trades Initiative who will give a brief background and introduction to the She Trades Initiative. And the presentation will also highlight the importance of women participation in trade policy making, as well as in the AfCFTA implementation. So I think without further ado, I invite ITC to give us the introduction and overview of She Trades Initiative. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tapiwa. I would like to present on behalf of ITC today. I would first like to make a small announcement on behalf of Ms. Judith Fesahai, who is supposed to be representing today ITC, but she sends her apologies that she's not able to make it as she is unwell. So we wish her speedy recovery. But I am happy to be presenting on her behalf. Let me share my screen quickly with you all. And I will try and be as brief as possible because the purpose of this presentation today is to provide just a bit of background information on the She Trades Initiative and context for the discussion to follow in this panel discussion. So as background on our initiative, and many of you may be aware of this already, the She Trades Initiative has a goal of connecting 3 million women to international markets by 2021. And we are the program within ITC that's dedicated to supporting women to trade. We have a series of 7 global actions that we've identified as areas for intervention to unlock markets for women to trade. And we work with different partners, including governments, private sector corporations, international organizations across all of these 7 areas to make this a reality for women. So just to briefly go over them, they range from championing quality data and ensuring fair and inclusive policies to securing public procurement contracts, opportunities with the private sector, capacity building and connections to market and unlocking financial services. And the last one is on opportunities for ownership rights. So with that being said, we have a few different modalities of working that include global support. This is mostly focused on the data and fair policies support that we have right now. Then we have in-country projects that range, I think, over 25 countries. We have a presence so far. We have partnerships, especially with private sector companies, including eBay, Maersk, UPS, and also local institutions that help us ensure that our interventions are sustainable and can be carried forward by them. And they also help to create and run national hubs, I should say. And lastly, I'd just like to share that we also have our shetrades.com platform that's available in English, French, and Spanish, I believe, right now already. And it's used to help women connect to buyers, investors, and new market opportunities. So with that being said, let me move on to the next slide. And it's just to give you an idea of where we stand now. What does the She Trades initiative look like in figures? So far, we've been able to help generate over 140 million US dollars in trade opportunities, help support 30,000 women-led businesses directly. As I mentioned, we have a presence in several countries already. Just this year, I believe we've provided training for more than 7,000 women entrepreneurs. We work with a global network of over 350 partner organizations, and we really focus on, besides directly supporting women-owned businesses and women-led businesses to build their capacity and competitiveness, we focus on creating a more conducive ecosystem, including the policy ecosystem for women to trade and to foster gender equality. So with that, I'd just like to introduce very quickly, because it may be of interest to some of you that are here today, a new tool that was launched earlier this year called the She Trades Outlook. And it is an online and tool that's already available on shetrades.com. The purpose is to allow governments, other stakeholders, including research institutions, women's business associations, etc., to look at how the policy ecosystem in countries are supporting women right now, to assess and find areas for improvement for the future, and also learn from each other. There are 6 different pillars that are included in the tool so far. That includes trade policy, business environment, legal and regulatory framework, access to skills, access to finance, and work in society. And I really encourage you to check out the website to see if you want to know more about it. Just to shed some light on how we collected the information, ITC has collected new data on 80% of the data that's included in the tool using an institutional survey. And this is complemented with existing data that is in publicly available sources as well to create a comprehensive profile for each country that's on the tool. Right now we have 25 that are included and plan to add more than 10 this year. And just to add that the tool does not provide a ranking of countries, but rather will help stakeholders look at gaps in data and identify potential areas for technical assistance and prioritize areas for policy reform. So bringing us to the topic of today, how women can make a difference and make sure that the AfCFTA can be more gender responsive and inclusive. We've already touched on this a bit yesterday, but recognizing that gender equality is really essential to achieving the goals under the Agenda 2063 and the overarching goals of the AfCFTA. Through a project that we have started last year, supported by GIZ and with several partners, including AUC, we have identified a few challenges and opportunities. I'd rather phrase them in that way, to say that there are opportunities to build technical and policy knowledge for women's economic empowerment, to leverage it, to make sure that the AfCFTA works for women, to look at how we can better engage women-owned businesses, and to also get the political support and high-level leadership to really to help us follow through and make sure that we reach these goals of gender equality that are enshrined already in the AfCFTA. So through this project that I mentioned, we're right now supporting women's business associations to identify priority issues related to the AfCFTA and fostering dialogues between women's associations and policymakers to agree on these priorities and potentially make commitments for the way forward. So far, as I mentioned, we've initiated collaboration with the AUC, with UNECA, with WIPO, TRALAC, experts, sectoral experts, and women's business associations to make this happen. So far, we have worked, as I mentioned, with experts to create briefs and build the capacity of women on several topics, including trade facilitation, non-tariff barriers, standards, trade and services, ICTs and digital trade, and also strengthening women's business associations. And I see we have several participants that have been part of these discussions in the call today. We have several of the experts that have helped us put this together, so it's really great that you're here to continue the discussion with us. So far, last year in November, we consulted more than 50 women's business associations and sectoral experts, representatives from regional economic communities, etc., and came up with a series of more than 40 recommendations on these 6 different topics. And this really gave us an opportunity, as we were able to gather more than 50 women's associations, to start to create the building blocks for a network of almost 1 million women across the continent. And this is really a wonderful opportunity to carry the work forward. So based on that, we realized that there are other opportunities as well for additional capacity building and institution strengthening. And so we launched a self-assessment tool earlier this year to identify these needs. And so I'd just like to share with you the next steps. So for now, looking into the next couple of months, we're going to hold additional consultations to validate the recommendations from the phase 1 issues that were discussed last year, and start to dive into the phase 2 issue topics, including competition policy, investment, intellectual property rights. We've already held a few webinars on these topics, and we'll continue to build the technical knowledge of the women's associations on these topics, which is really wonderful. Then from there, as I mentioned, looking at operationalizing the network, we will also be providing support on policy advocacy strategies, how to build a position paper, for example, and also at the same time, how to organize the network to facilitate the communication amongst the different associations and go from there. And this will be included in the series of events that we have into December and January of next year. So next, we've also been supporting some countries with mainstreaming gender and the recommendations that specifically came out of last year's discussions into national policies and strategies in their draft form so far. This includes Sierra Leone's national trade strategy, and the Gambia's also AfCFTA strategy, and the national export strategy for Ghana as well. And finally, I just wanted to highlight a few online solutions, especially understanding the COVID-19 pandemic that is going on right now. We have facilitated access to online crisis management tools for women's associations, both in English and in French, and they're available on our shetrades.com website, along with the briefs, and the new ones that we are creating on phase 2 issues will be posted there soon. And we're also in the process of developing online modules to support women's associations, not only on how to navigate the process of the AfCFTA and to get involved in the implementation strategies, but also to look at specifically under the RECs. I'd like to highlight that we are creating one on ECCAS right now, and hope to include other RECs as well in the future, and one on COMESA as well. But for this conversation, ECCAS is also relevant. So we'll be sure to share that all with you online as it's available, and we really encourage the women's associations that are here to benefit from this. And for now, we also have created a platform for discussion on Moodle, for example, where all of these resources are available, where we can have these discussion forums and continue to connect online, even though we wish we could do it in person, and hope we can soon. So with that, I would like to close the brief presentation on the She Trades Initiative and on what we're doing right now on the AfCFTA and hand it over to Mr. Tapiwa to moderate the panel. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Anna, for the comprehensive information with regards to the She Trades Initiative. I think all of us would agree the importance of women in trade in Africa, considering also they make quite a number of quite a great amount of population in our countries. I think I'll go on to introduce the next panel. Which is mainly to emphasize on some important elements which need to be considered to allow the effective participation of women in business in the AfCFTA. We have a standards expert, Mr. Amadou Diab, who is Inspector of Economic Services, Agency for Standardization and Quality Promotion in Mali. We also have a development economist who also specializes in trade facilitation in AfCFTA. He has worked in quite a number of ranks in Africa, who is Mr. Mark Pearson. We have also services and digital trade expert, Ms. Emily Mburu, who is also an independent consultant. I think going forward, I would like to ask each of the panelists to maybe I'll start with Mr. Amadou Diop to actually explain why do standards matter for women entrepreneurs in the context of AfCFTA. And in your brief presentation, which I would advise to take possibly 5 to 7 minutes, if you could actually explain to us what are some of the recommendations that you would give to ensure women can benefit from the agreement. Mr. Amadou.
Ok, bonjour à tous les participants. Je voudrais tout d'abord remercier la Commission de l'Union africaine, l'initiative She Trade de ITC, et aussi le GIZ pour l'organisation de cet atelier qui est important par rapport au dialogue politique qui permet en effet d'informer les parties prenantes et aussi orienter les décideurs par rapport aux prises de décision. Alors moi, mon intervention va être accentuée sur les questions de normes dans le cadre de la ZLECAF, orientée vers les entreprises de femmes. Et l'intervention sera axée sur un bref rappel du contexte, les questions de normes dans le cadre du ZLECAF et l'importance des normes pour les femmes dans la mise en œuvre de la ZLECAF. Et pour finir, je ferai une présentation des recommandations qui sont issues de notre atelier de novembre 2019 à Addis Abeba. Alors, par rapport au contexte, il est important de rappeler que l'Afrique commerce pour à peine 3% par rapport au commerce mondial et seulement 12 à 15% au niveau continental. Donc, c'est des statistiques qui apparaissent très faibles. Et par rapport aux autres régions du monde, en Europe, par exemple, on a un taux de commerce intracommunautaire qui va jusqu'à 67%, d'après les rapports de la CUNICEF, la Conférence des Nations Unies sur le commerce et le développement. Et aussi, il faut rappeler que dans le contexte mondial, les questions de normes ou les questions de mesures non tarifaires comptent beaucoup par rapport aux échanges commerciaux. Elles affectent jusqu'à 80% du commerce mondial. Ça, c'est un rapport de la Banque mondiale avec la CUNICEF qui ont montré que les mesures non tarifaires, y compris les questions de normes, de certification, et ainsi de suite, affectent jusqu'à 80% du commerce mondial. Et en Afrique particulièrement, ils affectent plus en Afrique et conduisent jusqu'à une augmentation de plus de 200% du coût des transactions commerciales. Et dans le contexte actuelle, la ZLECAF apparaît comme une nécessité pour éliminer d'abord les droits de douane, les barrières tarifaires, et ensuite éliminer les barrières non tarifaires, tout ce qui concerne les questions de normes, évaluation de la conformité, les tracasseries au niveau douanière, au niveau de l'entrée. Donc, la ZLECAF pourrait être une solution vraiment au niveau africain pour booster nos échanges intracommunautaires. Comme je vous l'ai dit, les questions de mesures non tarifaires sont très importantes et ce constat a été même fait au niveau de l'OMC. Il a apparu qu'à partir des années 60, les questions d'obstacles techniques au commerce, les questions de SPS ont beaucoup dominé le commerce international. On a assisté à une diminution drastique, c'est-à-dire des barrières tarifaires, mais une augmentation des barrières non tarifaires. Cela suppose que dès qu'il y a baisse de barrières tarifaires, cela s'accompagne généralement de barrières non tarifaires. Donc, il est très important dans le cadre de la ZLECAF de pallier à ces questions de barrières non tarifaires. Et cela est prévu au niveau de l'article 4 de l'accord cadre et aussi l'article DB du protocole sur le commerce des marchandises, lequel protocole même prévoit des annexes, notamment l'annexe 6 qui porte sur les obstacles techniques au commerce, tout ce qui est question de normes, tout ce qui est question d'évaluation de la conformité et tout ce qui est question d'organismes qui sont chargés de soutenir ces questions-là. Donc, il est évident qu'on a besoin d'une infrastructure qualité, efficace et efficiente pour pouvoir soutenir toutes ces dispositions qui sont prévues dans les annexes sur les obstacles techniques au commerce, les mesures sanitaires et phytosanitaires et même les barrières non tarifaires. Et la normalisation, les questions de normes vont jouer un rôle très important. C'est pour cela que l'Union africaine, à travers ASSO, ils doivent pouvoir booster l'adoption de la politique qualité en Afrique pour pouvoir soutenir cette infrastructure de la qualité afin de pouvoir booster les échanges entre les pays. En matière de normalisation, l'article 6 au niveau de l'annexe portant sur les obstacles techniques sur le commerce prévoit la coopération en matière de normalisation. Et là, on invite tous les États membres de l'Union africaine à promouvoir l'adoption de normes qui seront développées par ASSO, qui est l'organisme africain de normalisation, qui s'occupe de la normalisation dans presque tous les domaines, sauf l'électrotechnique, les normes qui concernent les produits électriques, électrotechniques, qui sont, eux, élaborés par AFSEC. Présentement, ASSO a 39 membres et à ce fait, le sommet extraordinaire des chefs d'État de l'Union africaine avait même demandé à ce que tous les États membres de l'Union africaine adhèrent à l'ASSO. Ça, c'était en 2014. Donc, vous voyez que c'est un défi. On est 55 États. Présentement, il n'y a que 39 qui sont membres de l'ASSO. Donc, il est important que tous les États adhèrent à l'ASSO pour qu'on puisse vraiment travailler plus sur l'harmonisation des normes. Maintenant, la norme, pour commencer, c'est quoi la norme? Il faut comprendre qu'une norme, c'est un document qui est établi par consensus et approuvé par un organisme qui est reconnu. Donc, il fournit pour des usages communs des règles, des lignes directrices et des caractéristiques pour des activités et résultats qui garantissent un niveau d'ordre optimal dans un contexte donné. Ça, c'est la définition donnée par l'ISO, qui est l'Organisation internationale de normalisation. Donc, presque tous les États membres de l'Union africaine sont membres, presque. Et la norme peut porter sur des spécifications produits qui donnent des caractéristiques physiques et chimiques et même organoleptiques par rapport à un produit. Il peut porter aussi sur les méthodes de test. Il peut être un guide qui donne des recommandations comment faire. Il peut porter sur des terminologies, etc. Et les normes sont élaborées à différents niveaux. On a différents niveaux de normalisation. Ça peut être au niveau national, une norme qui est élaborée au niveau national. Je donne un exemple, par exemple, en Tanzanie, les normes qui sont élaborées par le TBS qui est l'organisme de normalisation de la Tanzanie, ou en Cameroun, en Nord, ou au Kenya, Québec. Donc, c'est des organismes de normalisation nationaux qui élaborent des normes nationales. Et le niveau de normalisation peut être aussi régional. Par exemple, quand on prend ECOCHAM au niveau de la CEDEAO, ECOCHAM, c'est l'organisme d'harmonisation des normes au niveau de la CEDEAO. Ou quand on prend la CEAC, comment on appelle la communauté des États de l'Afrique de l'Est, là aussi, on a un organisme d'harmonisation des normes des différents pays qui sont membres de cette communauté économique régionale. Et au plan international, on a les organismes tels que ISO, qui est l'organisme international de normalisation. Il y a IC pour les produits électrotechniques. Il y a le Codex pour tout ce qui concerne les produits alimentaires. Et les normes aussi peuvent être élaborées au niveau des entreprises. C'est généralement ce qu'on appelle les normes privées. Donc ça, c'est les différents types, ça, c'est les différents niveaux de normalisation. Maintenant, la normalisation, il faut comprendre aussi, elle ne se fait pas comme ça, elle est guidée par des principes. Et au niveau de ces principes, il y a des principes qui sont très importants pour les femmes, pour leur participation aux activités de normalisation. Il y a un principe appelé ouverture. Normalement, les travaux de normalisation sont ouverts à tout partie prenant qui souhaite prendre part à ces travaux. Là, les femmes entrepreneurs peuvent demander d'être impliquées dans les travaux de normalisation. Il y a l'efficacité et la pertinence. Les normes ne sont pas élaborées pour être élaborées, elles doivent répondre à des besoins. Là, les femmes doivent exprimer leurs besoins en termes de normalisation par rapport à leur domaine d'activité. Il y a l'impartialité et le consensus. Aucune partie prenante ne peut imposer dans le processus d'élaboration des normes des choses que l'ensemble du groupe n'a pas n'a pas le consensus autour. Il y a l'engagement des parties prenantes. Là, c'est l'implication des associations professionnelles, telles que les associations des femmes, ainsi de suite. Et puis, il y a la dimension développement comme principe. C'est que la normalisation, c'est une chose qui permet de regrouper les plus petits et les plus grands. Donc, il n'y a pas question de grandes entreprises, de petites entreprises. Tout est mis ensemble pour travailler ensemble en matière de normalisation. Et en termes de parties prenantes, on a les entreprises, elles sont parties prenantes de l'activité de normalisation. On a les associations. Là, les associations de femmes peuvent demander à être impliquées dans la normalisation. On a les industries, on a les consommateurs, etc. Et comme avantage pour les femmes, les normes permettent d'abord de rationaliser les processus de production ou de fabrication. C'est-à-dire, auparavant, si vous avez... Il faut comprendre par processus, c'est assimilable aux étapes par rapport à la production. Il peut y avoir des étapes qui sont même inutiles si vous ne consultez pas une norme pour savoir comment faire. Voilà, vous continuerez à utiliser des processus qui seront peut-être inutiles pour votre activité. Et vous permettent aussi d'améliorer les processus, les matières premières, les produits, la main-d'œuvre, puisque dans les normes, il y a des exigences. Quand vous prenez chaque exigence, il vous dira qu'est-ce qui est attendu de vous, qu'est-ce que vous devez faire. Donc, cela vous permet de contrôler vos processus, vos matières premières et même les produits. Et du coup, ça vous permet aussi d'assurer une meilleure sécurité des produits qui seront fabriqués, c'est-à-dire des produits qui seront fabriqués et pour garantir la santé des consommateurs. Et ça vous permet surtout d'accroître votre compétitivité, surtout la compétitivité hors prix, puisque dans le cas de la ZLECAF, quand la mise en œuvre va commencer en janvier 2021, donc les entreprises de femmes qui ont la capacité d'exporter dans d'autres pays doivent assurer cette compétitivité hors prix, c'est-à-dire la compétitivité à travers la qualité de vos produits, puisque quand votre produit va se trouver avec un autre produit concurrent, il faut qu'il y ait une différence pour pouvoir attirer le consommateur, les clients. Il y aura des gains, les normes vous permettent d'augmenter vos gains de productivité et même diminuer le coût de la non-qualité. Souvent, si vous n'appliquez pas les normes, vous pouvez avoir des problèmes avec des produits de non-qualité des produits de non-qualité.
Mr. Amadou?
Oui. Yes.
Mr. Amadou, if we can, if I can interrupt you for a bit, my apologies for that. I think because of time, maybe you could just sum up the recommendations to say how can what would you recommend with regards to women's participation in trade in terms of standards.
Dans le commerce. Oui, en termes de recommandations, ce qu'on a recommandé à l'atelier de novembre 2019, c'est d'abord de pouvoir faciliter la participation des femmes aux travaux de normalisation. Et il a été constaté que les femmes ne participent pas beaucoup aux travaux de normalisation, c'est même au niveau de ISO. Donc, il va falloir promouvoir la participation des femmes dans ces comités de normalisation. Et aussi, comme recommandation, il va falloir renforcer l'infrastructure qualité au niveau national, régional et continental. Je sais que le programme PACI, le programme de l'infrastructure qualité en Afrique, a beaucoup travaillé dans ce sens, mais il va falloir renforcer encore et accélérer l'harmonisation des normes au niveau régional, au niveau continental, afin de faciliter l'accès au marché à ces entreprises de femmes. Et mettre des mécanismes d'appui technique et financier aux entreprises de femmes, parce que pour respecter une norme, ça implique des coûts, ça implique certaines technicités. Il faut pouvoir mettre des mécanismes d'appui dans ce sens-là. Et aussi, il faut fournir des informations grâce à des outils qui sont simples et accessibles pour faciliter la maîtrise des procédures et les règles qui sont contenues dans les normes. Par exemple, on peut produire des matériels didactiques avec des pictogrammes pour pouvoir orienter ces entreprises de femmes-là dans l'implémentation des normes. Voilà les recommandations qui sont issues de notre atelier de novembre 2019. Je vais espérer pouvoir développer les autres parties de ce qui concerne les normes dans les questions et réponses. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, Mr. Diop, for the elaborate presentation. I think we've learned a lot with regards to standards and how women can be involved in standards. I think I'll move on next to Mr. Mark Person. If Mr. Person, if you can please tell us why trade facilitation really matters for women entrepreneurs. In the context of the African Continental Free Trade Area, as an expert in quite a number of regional economic communities, you could go further to actually explain to us what are the recommendations to ensure women can benefit from this agreement, since it's just about to be implemented. Countries will be trading under the new trade regime in a few months' time. Mr. Mark Person.
Thank you, Tapiwa, and also hello to everyone. It's good to see so many people and so many people we met last year also on this call.
Sorry, Mark. Maybe just a quick announcement. If colleagues, you can as we go, you can feel free to put in your questions on the chat box so that we can have those answered at the end of the session. Thank you, Mark. Sorry about that.
No problem. Okay, I mean, I'm going to be quick. I think we're running out of time. So first of all, I'd like to just do the general issues of why trade facilitation is so important, and then maybe talk about how it's addressed in the framework of the AfCFTA, and then maybe concentrate a little bit on why it's so important for women and some of the recommendations. So, I mean, if you remember, we spoke about this last year, and trade facilitation was looked at as basically removing red tape at borders. I think that the impact of trade facilitation on African trade, on inter-African trade, Mr. Diop also said earlier on that it's about 10% of total trade, 10 to 16% of total trade is inter-African trade or trade which originates from within Africa. And it's important for us to increase that by improving trade facilitation. There are issues in terms of trade policy, and usually you would have a free trade agreement which deals with trade policy first and foremost. But I think the African Continental Free Trade Agreement has moved well beyond that old-fashioned trade facilitation agreement where you just deal with trade policy, and we're looking at all sorts of aspects: trade and services, trade facilitation, removal of NTBs, etc. So trade facilitation really can be broken up into three main areas, and trade facilitation within the framework of the African Continental Free Trade Agreement follows very closely the trade facilitation agreement. It goes beyond the trade facilitation agreement to the WTO. But basically, I think that what we see is that both the Trade Facilitation Agreement and the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, Annex 4 of AfCFTA, Trading Goods Protocol, follows very much the Articles 5, 8, and 10 of the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade. So there is a commonality across the agreements. So, and all of the trade agreements or the trade facilitation agreements really address trade facilitation in terms of transparency, how you can improve transparency in terms of import, export, and transit issues, and in terms of cooperation and coordination. So transparency really is providing information to people so that they know what is available, and so that they are educated in their rights, if you like. And that I'll come back to, but I think is also very important for the gender aspects, because quite often the traders that we have in Africa, the small scale traders, are women and don't have access to much information. So we need to try and find ways to empower the women and educate them in their rights, so that they're able to know what to expect and to be able to enforce those rights if they come up against officials who are trying to well, let's say, bully them into not knowing what is right for them. There is issues on import, export, and transit. Those issues are movement of goods under customs control. They're cross-border issues, a number of more technical aspects of customs and the application of customs, and also the application of transit and transport facilitation. And again, I think it's important that all traders understand at least some of the details of the import, export, and transit regulations that go under trade facilitation. They don't need to get into the details of how customs management systems work, but they also need to pretty much understand what customs officers are looking for, and what other cross-border officials are looking for. And then the final issue that we would be talking about really is cooperation and coordination, and that is especially important in terms of cross-border trade, because really you're not going to get trade facilitation unless you have common procedures and common standards, transport standards, transit standards, etc., which operate across borders, because you'll be stuck at the border for a long time as people try and adjust to what happens on the other side of the border. And it's very much in line with Amadou Diop's presentation as well. There needs to be standardization throughout the trade facilitation aspects as well, and that is important for the female traders to also know, because if they're not aware of those things, then they cannot also advocate for standardization and to add their voice to standardization, which is often a very bureaucratic issue. And unfortunately, the COVID situation has meant that there is a lot more bureaucracy and red tape, not always something which is a TBT, but also an NTB. And I think that in some countries, COVID is unfortunately being used as an excuse to enforce controls that maybe are not as necessary as people would like us to think they are. In terms of the recommendations, I just wanted to sort of like group them as well into maybe 3 different types of groups. One would be just really in terms of empowering women on their rights. As I said before, most traders most small-scale traders in Africa are women, and they often don't have access to the legislation and of their rights. And you will find that throughout the world, customs and other border agencies have moved or should be moving from policing trade to providing a service for trade. So they should be service providers to all traders. They should not be trying to stop trade. We're trying to promote trade here, not trying to stop trade. So there should be no reason why people are putting barriers into traders' way unless they are breaking the law. So I think the only way that you're going to change that mindset is to empower the traders, and especially to empower the small scale traders to be able to know what their rights are, and to then be able to work perhaps in groups, in women's groups, in women's traders groups, to try and make sure that they are able to change the mindset of the officials, and to be able to make sure that they are within their rights. The other issue is really in terms of instruments that can be used to improve the ability of small-scale traders, especially female small-scale traders, to take advantage of, in this case, the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. And one of the things that has been used in a lot of regional organizations, which may be upscaled to the Africa Union, would be the simplified trade regime, which allows small-scale traders to operate, to trade in goods which originate from within Africa, and to be able to trade without any red tape, without any operating within ASACUDA or customs management systems up to a certain level, what's called the de minimis level, and then also to operate within a common list of goods. And that certainly has made a big impact on the East African community. SADC is still negotiating or discussing how they will implement it, and COMESA has been using the simplified trade regime for quite some time. It does really improve the trade facilitation aspects for small-scale traders, and especially women. And finally, I think the other set of recommendations is around improving the safety of women when they're trading. Throughout the whole of Africa, the challenges are that women are when they're pushed out of the formal trading regime, they go more into the informal regime, which then leaves them open to all sorts of challenges with officials if they are caught. And so those issues need to be addressed, and to improve the safety within the environment of the small scale traders. And I think I've done my 10 minutes, so thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mark, first for being on time, and secondly for the elaborate presentation. We see that what is needed to do is to promote trade, like what you said, and not create barriers to trade. And with regards to women who mostly are small scale traders, we see quite a lot of abuse on the borders, and this most of the times is primarily due to that information gap. Because they don't know some of the processes and some of the documents which are needed. They're vulnerable to quite a lot of abuse from border officials. I think we'll go on to our next speaker, who actually tell us about services trade and services and digital trade, and what is the impact of services and digital trade for women entrepreneurs in the context of AfCFTA, as well as letting us know what are some of the recommendations to ensure that there is greater participation and greater benefits to women in as far as the African Continental Free Trade Area is concerned. Also taking note that the trade and services in Africa is quite low, also to the effect that trade and services with the world is below 2%, which is quite low. So Miss Emily Mburu, if you could please take us through trade and services and digital trade in the context of AfCFTA.
Thank you very much, Tapiwa, and thank you, colleagues who have even presented before me. One of the key issues that maybe I should mention on the onset is that for us dealing with trading services, it was it was good news actually to see that trading services was dealt with under phase 1 of the negotiations, the AfCFTA negotiations, together with the goods negotiations, because that also gives us room to see that the importance of trading services in Africa is now being appreciated more than it was before. And maybe just to mention that as it is becoming more and more clear that trading, let's say services are important even in the case of manufacturing and even in the agricultural sector, with the new word that has been coined for that being servicification of manufacturing, and also in the case of agriculture. So it also has shown that trading services or services themselves are key in terms of the development of the global value chains, and also the supply chains, and logistics, of course, becomes very important, and that goes in line with what my colleague Mark was mentioning in terms of trade facilitation. Because for us in Africa to be able to develop in terms of the value chains and even join the global or develop regional value chains, then we have to ensure that our services sectors are well developed at the national and also at the regional level. And here we would give a lot of clout to the SADC region for actually developing their industrialization policy or strategy, which has a lot of areas of trading services included in that, because they have recognized the importance of trading services or services related issues in ensuring that we have well-functioning global and regional value chains. Now, moving on then to deal with what is the impact of, let's say, even services liberalization on women in general, or women traders. And here we see that liberalization of trading services has great potential to generate substantial increase in the employment opportunities for women. And what the evidence that is there is mostly in the Asian market, but we are seeing even in the Asian market, it's more the issues related to outsourcing. And when we talk outsourcing, we are saying that we will use digital platforms to be able to provide services across borders without the need of the consumer of the service, or even the client who is the client or the consumer of the service, and even the service provider moving from where they are. And in this case, you see that a lot of outsourcing work is actually being done by women. And later on, I'll give a bit of an example of Ghana and the work and how trade has actually made women even go to school more now, because they can be able then to be employed more in the outsourcing sector. And maybe just to mention that the services sector that are mostly outsourcing is done, and where women are more employed in are in the back office processing, call centers. And we have also seen an increase in women mobility in terms of education, health, and provide professional services across borders. So you'll see, even if we can have then a case where those sectors where women are more involved are then more liberalized in the different commitments that African member states or state parties will make, will be quite instrumental then in ensuring that women benefit in the liberalization of trading services under the AfCFTA. Another issue that I would like to raise is that we see that women employed in the services sectors abroad are also key in ensuring that Africa receives the remittances that we normally see coming into Africa. And this is because women save more, and women by nature would want to just send some money home for the use of the family. So basically we see that women send home a larger proportion of their earnings from abroad than even men do. So we see that if we have more women then in the different services sectors, then you will have more income even coming into Africa from countries that are beyond the African continent. Then even following the same line, we see that then women become quite instrumental in terms of providing foreign exchange. That is, when you send back your remittances from abroad, you are then increasing the foreign exchange available in your country of origin. And in this case, we are talking about the different African countries. And of course, we also look at other economic sectors, especially like women employed in the tourism sector. And the tourism sector is one of the key areas where governments also get foreign exchange and revenue as a whole. Then we see that also there are a number of challenges, of course, for women in the services sector. And in this case, that we see that women are primarily in the lower level or medium skilled level when they are employed. And also we have women who have what we will call micro and small scale businesses. So there are, yes, entrepreneurs, women entrepreneurs, but few have been able to actually move higher to the medium and large enterprises. So those are some of the challenges that women are facing. However, even with those challenges, we see that more women are now getting into the services sector. And according to data from ILO, you will see that women now are being employed in more areas, as I mentioned earlier, the call centers, in the nursing professional, tourism, and even now in ICT. And from the meeting we had last November, we did actually go into details to see even which areas do we have more women even in the digital sector. And as I mentioned earlier, there is the example of girls in Ghana actually going to school more because they can be more involved in the outsourcing work, which is giving young women in Ghana more opportunities. And of course, when we say going to school, it also means ensuring that they also have the right accents to be able to participate, especially when it comes to call centers. And of course, that then means that with women going more to school, then they're able to get into even the technological sectors to be able to provide more services at higher levels because of the opportunities. They start with the outsourcing, but the more you see that the services sector has opportunities, then you move and get more education to move into higher services sector. Then touching quickly on the issues of women in ICT services and digital trade under the AfCFTA, we see that it is, and we are happy that under the AUC now there is a strategy that has been developed on e-commerce. But now we look at how then can that be integrated into the AfCFTA work to ensure that digital trade is well taken care of, and especially when we talk about financial and communication services in a way that we can enhance better even cross-border mobile payments or any other payment platforms that may be developed in Africa to ensure that the payments are throughout the continent can actually easily be done. And here one of the key issues that we looked at is how then do we ensure that the AfCFTA embraces the digital economy better, and also to ensure that it then enhances trade and investment and provides an e-based business platform that will promote good governance and facilitate green technology for the continent as a whole, and then of course including women. Then also the issue of service providers in Africa, and here especially talking about women, they can benefit, or maybe let me say we, because I'm also in that among the women group, we can benefit more from global digital platforms, and here these can be used especially to bring about economic value creation and also connect and have networks with different women groups or even business connections around the globe, or even within the countries where the persons or the women are coming from. And here we see that this will then improve efficiency and also increase access to domestic and international markets. There are examples that are given of where Facebook has been used as a means of marketing domestic services, and Facebook being global, then you can actually even be able to market in the African continent using Facebook and other platforms that are available. Then, of course, there are a number of new digital solutions that are being developed. And here we have to actually do mention that there are a number of women that are involved in companies, small micro and medium enterprises that are actually developing digital solutions in the continent in the different sectors, not only services sectors. Then we also see that, and this I had mentioned earlier, and I know most colleagues have also mentioned, is that women, of course, have a number of challenges that they have to face, and generally also face a number of barriers when trying to get into the different sectors, not only trading services, even in the case of trading goods. And we see that then women are mostly then pushed to become informal, moved more to the informal sector than being in the formal sector. And that's why issues of trade facilitation and having the simplified trade regimes becomes very important for us, both in trading services and in this case, even trading goods. And here we see that in that case, with the rise of digital economy, women then have now new opportunities at work and in business, even though this brings, of course, additional challenges. And of course, then it means that women need to train more and also to retrain. And of course, then that becomes key when we come to she trades, because that, of course, then becomes some of the elements that can, or some of the areas that she trade picks up then to assist women and to train them especially in this case when we talk about digital trade, so that they can be able to take advantage of the opportunities that digital technology is creating, and even in terms of access to finance. So we see one of the key barriers that women face is really access to finance, but the different digital technology that has come up really gives room even for women to come up to get access to finance. And even most countries now, we can actually say, have been including women and taking care of women when it comes to access to finance, but it is not yet at a level that we can say it is optimal for women. So we would need to see more policies towards ensuring that women actually are able to get access to finance. Now, moving on then to recommendations.
Sorry. Okay, maybe you can move on to recommendations, Emily. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to the recommendations then from our meeting held in November of last year. I see that Arahita has put only the ones on ICT, but I'll also highlight some of the ones on trading services that came out so that it will be clear also the link with ICT and digital trade and trading services. And here, looking at the ones on trading services, there was the issue that we need an increased participation of women entrepreneurs, both in region, not only in national, but also in regional and continental committees that are working in the area of trading services. So especially when we move on to issues of implementation, then it will be very important to actually have women entrepreneurs and the private sector in general in the Committee on Trading Services, and also the need to establish national network of information in the area of trading services, and then having a realization of promotional workshops for women entrepreneurs on the information networks that are related to trading services, and also the development of African standards and upgrading in services sectors of interest to women entrepreneurs. So those, you can see also the issue of standards that Mr. Diop had mentioned earlier, then come into play. Now, moving on then to the recommendation from the ICT and digital on ICT and digital trade, we see the need for inclusion of ICT and digital trade in the implementation of the AfCFTA protocol on trading services, ensuring that there is capacity building needs of women, especially in ICT services, and enhancing digital trade for development of tailor-made technical assistance. So we need first to assess the capacity building needs and then develop the tailor-made technical assistance. Then another key one, because we can be able to read the others, is to ensure that we create a trade information portal on ICT services and digital trade under the SheTrades website, then have cooperation and matching of innovation hubs and trade fairs on ICT and digital platforms for enhancing peer-to-peer learning. And the last one was to have a standalone chapter for women in ICT services and digital trade under the proposed coalition of women in services under the AfCFTA and also under SheTrades. I'll stop there, Mr. Moderator, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Emily, for a very informative presentation with regards to trading services as well as digital trade. I could say some time back, like a few decades ago, trading services wasn't really an issue. But we start to realize how much impact it is, like you mentioned, the certification of manufacturing sector. You can talk of things like transport, business communications, finance. All those play a role in making sure that trade is as smooth as possible. So thank you very much about that. Colleagues, We continue to encourage the discussion in the chat. I can see there's a very healthy discussion in the chat. We have Dorothy who indicated that consumer education is important when it comes to standards to ensure that consumers buy certified products. If you're a producer of a product and you're not ensuring that it lives up to the standards, or you're not certifying your products, then you simply take yourself out of business. So these are some of the things that women can take advantage of to make sure that their products are certified. But we need to also educate the women with regards to that as well. We also have some Joanna from WCO who is saying that WCO has a gender equality organizational assessment tool, which actually promotes gender equality in border operations. So colleagues, you could join the conversation in the chat, and we'll pick up some of the questions. We might not be able to pick up all of the questions, but we'll pick up some of the questions and continue the discussion as we go. I think I'll move on to the next session, and then we'll take questions at the end of this webinar. This session has to do with the perspective of women entrepreneurs. We've had from the experts, we've had what the experts know, and the theoretical part of this discussion. But we would also want to hear from representatives of the African Women's Business Associations, from three RECs, to provide their perspective on the expectations of doing business under the African Continental Free Trade Area regime. We have, my apology if I massacre your name, but we have Miss Angela Bagin, a chairperson for the East African Women in Business platform. We also have Miss Koko, who is a technical support and advisory consultant for women economic and social advancement for the Gracia Machel Trust. We also have Miss Eliane, who is the vice president of the Federation of Entrepreneurs of DRC. So without further ado, colleagues, I would ask you to mute your mic if you're not talking. Without further ado, I would like to ask Miss Angela, in a few minutes, if you can, to let us know, what do you expect to change for women in business within your respective REC under the African Continental Free Trade Area, with particular focus on opportunities related to digital trade. Miss Angela, if you can, please.
Thank you, Tapiwa, and a good afternoon to everyone. I'm happy Emily covered a lot on digital trade. She has made my work easier because I'm now speaking purely about the Women Business Associations and the work that we've been putting into digital trade. Now, I represent East African Women in Business, EWIB, the platform, which is an association really covering all the associations across the region, the East African region, community region, and specifically we've been working on many of these AfCFTA issues with the associations and getting to the grassroots level. And digital trade has come in quite a bit because the circumstances have pushed us to go that direction. So as EWIB, our goal really is to ensure that no East African woman in business is left behind. And we are making sure we are talking about digital trade at different levels, the basic level, those who are at the middle level, and those who have upgraded and now are really high-tech in the way they're operating. This particular year we've created a shift that has moved trade, the e-commerce, at a level faster than we had anticipated. We were already planning to set up virtual markets. Some were in the process of being tested. So the COVID pandemic pushed us to move faster and gave us the ability to know that we can actually move this whole process of regional integration at a level faster than we had anticipated. So while there is no single recognized and accepted definition of digital campus, but it encompasses digitally enabled transactions of trade in goods and services, and it can either be digital or digitally, physically delivered. What I mean by that is that we are beginning to see technologies merging with the trade dimensions and merging at different levels. There are processes, there are products and services that are being moved across purely on a digital platform, but others are being used, the platforms are being used as a conduit in other circumstances. So when we're looking at this particular aspect to see where we have gone and where we are getting to as associations, we need to speak of digital transformation, the digital economy, and then we will find the success factors, because the opportunities lie in the success factors so far, and also lie in the opportunities that have now come up and are new but no longer alien to the associations. The key thing we've noticed is that there's an urgent need to have digital skills development. So Trading Services has now created opportunity for this skills development to be cascaded across the region, especially for people who have a high accessibility to training and people who are interested in being trained at the different levels. Now, we can't talk about skills development without building confidence of our people, because our women have a confidence levels that are quite low, and self-esteem levels that are also low as well, based on quite a number of factors, including cultural divide, perspective, cultural divide, education levels, etc. So for us to be able to tap into these opportunities, we are cascading our ability to build this, develop skills at different levels, right down to that rural woman who initially would not have used a smartphone, but now has to use a smartphone to access the different technologies that will help her get her produce to the market. So we also need to look at the sufficient and well-distributed physical and digital infrastructure. Right now, we can't say we have a credible digital infrastructure, but the need is there. So this is creating opportunity for us to work together with the development partners, governments, private sector, to be able to provide this infrastructure. And the infrastructure looks at the flow of data as well as the delivery of goods. So how do we merge the two? As we speak, we know that the highest employment rate among the technology companies like Uber and so on is highly female. Call centers are the percentages of women who are working and operating in these businesses. So we need to look in that direction to see the opportunities, because the space is available, it has opened up. So we also need to look at the opportunities that have come up on the regulatory environment. For all of us on this call, trade policy, trade dialogue is alien to the woman who's running a business in a rural area. So we are speaking at a level that they don't understand. So we have opportunity now to teach and guide and also enhance the literacy levels on technology to the women. And this doesn't have to be based on formal education, but I think we can have comprehensive programs set up and cascaded across the different regions and even measured for impact based on the different levels that we advance to ensure that we move the women at a certain pace. If we're giving ourselves 2035, we must have that target set, and then we can know what we need to do to put in the right infrastructure and inputs that are required. Now, that being the case, where do we stand in the region? We've recognized that pre-COVID, we had understood there was a growing importance for digital trade. However, post-COVID, we've been catapulted into digital trade fully, and the success stories now need to be pulled out, because the women, on the grassroots women, the grassroots business women, the entrepreneurs are capable of making change at community level. We are looking at the RECs, doing community work at a regional level, but we need to then have a systematic structure that carries right down to the different villages and communities that will then spread digital trade to areas that are unreachable but are accessible based on these networks. We also need to understand that the education system has to change. We've seen a lot of it go online, which was unbelievable a year back, but now that schools have embraced online training, I think the space has opened up for us to be able to enhance their ability to improve on sciences, engineering, mathematics. We are still importing third-hand, fourth-hand, cheap technology from, especially China, which is costly for women entrepreneurs, which is very costly for given the earnings they have, for them to be able to sustain.
Il faut qu'elle puisse confirmer.
Okay, so for them to be able to change, we need to have some of these technologies brought on board within. And to be able to do that, we need to increase global focus on the women, on the girls, especially on science and technology, and improve in those areas and have online-based training to be able to do this. We've seen deliberate steps in Rwanda. They've been very aggressive with their Smart Rwanda master plan, focused on digital innovation, targeting youth. In Uganda, we've seen innovation hubs coming up, digital innovation hubs, and we've seen many youth coming up with very captivating and enticing new ways and new models of doing business. Of course, with Kenya launched a digital economy blueprint, and I think within the region, if we go step by step and emulate each other, we will be able to move. Now, we also need the opportunities, of course, with the increasing the minimum thresholds in which women are in leadership roles. We need more women in technology roles, executive positions, so that they're able to think strategically for the women. We also need to promote women to lead negotiations, trade negotiations, because they are the center of ensuring that the women are then upgraded. Now, of course, we know women-led businesses cover about 35% of online revenue, 15% of offline retail revenue. So we need to then find these opportunities to increase that 35% and double it. We need to reduce the structural inequalities that are there infrastructure-wise. Digital trade is really less affordable by women, but there's an opportunity for women-led businesses to be the flag bearers of this specific item. So we also we have opportunity to go into a cultural mindset change, and I think our tone of training needs to move from hard skill only and also center on soft skill and raise confidence levels, because once we do that, we will be able to bring more and more women into the fold. So the opportunities on capacity building have increased. Now, we cannot do this all alone. We know there are mushrooming tech hubs in Rwanda, in Kenya, in Uganda. In 2019, 618 tech hubs in Africa in total came up. The tech quadrangle, Nigeria had 85, South Africa had 80, Egypt had 56, Kenya had 48. In Uganda, we had 10, Tanzania had 17. So efforts are being made to provide space for digital skills development, and these opportunities are there for young women to come up and take the lead in ensuring that this space is taken up. So the key thing that we need to note is really, the hubs are there, but they're providing co-working space. They are not yet maximizing usage of the digital technologies. And I think we've seen it even with ourselves, with our own smartphones. We are not yet there where we know everything we can use our smartphone for. So we need to now move from that level of simply having the hubs, but now making them innovation centers that are able to now start developing and creating, as opposed to imitating or copying. So funding remains a big gap, and in EWIB specifically, most of the women are challenged because of access to funding, but the opportunities also on access to finance digitally have opened up. And I think we've seen over the last 2-3 years, more women taking up opportunity in leadership positions in the banking industry, in SACCOs, and therefore there's opportunity to enhance women to actually trade at a level that higher than they were. We also need to look at the mobile economy. Basically, how has it reached the grassroots? Because now trade has bypassed some of the banking options. So we have the village markets, we have the farm gate markets. There are technologies that have come up, and we need to work on deregulating the digital restructuring of certain sectors like agriculture. So there are opportunities in having input advisories, there are opportunities in real-time tracking, monitoring, and evaluation of climatic conditions, of agribusiness, value addition, and real-time markets as well. The opportunities in price forecasting. All these are opportunities that are alien to many who are traditional and see business as something that must be blue-collar, original. So we need to change the mindset of our people. We need to change the way, the mindset of the global leaders think, because the pre-negotiations on many of the trade agreements did not have digital highlighted. And now the digital has come to the forefront. So much as the agreements may also have elements that are lacking in this area, these trade agreements need to be reviewed to include the women factor and include the digital space. Now, as EWIB specifically, yes, I'm just going to give a few recommendations, and then I'll wrap up. So on among our recommendations, the regional, national platforms, networks of women in business need to be involved specifically on their own, because this work will not be done by the RECs at a higher level. So our work as EWIB has been really to bring in individuals to the table to actually have these conversations on policy and implement on the ground. So we're not working through spokespeople who might represent views. Then the AfCFTA will not solve the issue of the digital divide, but it may help accelerate the creation of solutions. And so we need to work together with the development partners to design interventions, to work with the citizens, the experts, so that the interventions have a loop where everyone is working in cohesion. Special attention must be paid to the groups that are traditionally left behind in order to help them catch up. Some may choose to, some may not. However, they need to be given that opportunity to choose to participate. We must conduct a digital skills mapping to identify what the status quo is. And I thank ITC for actually pushing this as well. Then we also need to recognize the deficiencies embedded in different countries, because different countries have different challenges. We need to support product development and the attainment of international standards. And we also need to include the platform in policy discussions on the creation of enabling safe and inclusive digital environments. Lastly, we must reach women through women in business platforms. We've had these discussions at COMESA level, COMFIB. We've had these at EAC level, and we're having them even at national level. We must be able to have all these associations linked so that the value of associations is understood and embraced in each country. So with that, I think if we have inclusive education systems and we're able to bring confidence building, match the skills that have been mismatched, we will be able to change the digital space for women within the East African community and the different RECs. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Angela. I think we can quickly move on to Ms. Coco from the Gracia Machel Trust. to give us an indication of what she expects or with regards to change for women in business in the respective rank under the AfCFTA, looking at trade and services.
Good afternoon, and thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to be part of this trade policy dialogue. The Graça-Machel Trust really, I think, in line with what Emily has said, what Angela has said, and Mark and Hamadou, we really, this idea of how do we organize and women and mobilize them to be able to take the issue of policy decision making. Excuse me? Okay. Sorry. So at the Graça-Machel Trust, we advocate for, we're on this advocacy agenda to convene and sensitize women and empower them to become part of policy and decision making to advance the economic interest and participation. We work with Business Women's Association in East, South, and West Africa, and we also have seeded networks of women in finance and agribusiness. Our work aims to connect women as networks at the national, regional, sub-regional, continental level. And then also, we've also looked at some of the challenges that comes up when we know that Africa is said to be the highest growth rate, has the highest growth rate in female-run businesses in the world, and yet it is predicted that many will remain micro with little prospect to scale if we are not intentional about building the capacity of women to change that. So we've also taken on some of the challenge of developing an initiative called Women Creating Wealth, where we're building, we're training the capacity, we're training, as Angela said, really confidence building for them to also dream bigger and to know that they can take their businesses, they've got the experience, they just need the confidence to take their business to the next level. And so we have 400 women in Zambia, Malawi, Tanzania, and South Africa who we are really also wanting to connect to be able to drive this intra-Africa trade. I think when it comes to some of the challenges, we've also found that I think both Emily and Angela have alluded to this. We know that anytime you do a capacity building exercise and you see the cross sectors of businesses in the cohort, you'll find that we have found that at least 40 to 45% of women are in the services sector. And we recognize what they contribute and the value of what they do, but financiers and investors and government policy often does not give them the due recognition. And this will come up when, say, you invite them to come and listen to their pitches. Most will say, we're interested in agribusiness, we're interested in energy extractions and infrastructure, but we're not, services, I don't know, they don't know what to do with it. So it's a real problem. And I think we also heard Trudy say that yesterday, that there doesn't seem to be an integrated strategy for the services sector, for big business, let alone the small business. We see a huge opportunity in this. And I think, I think it was Emily who alluded to it, that, women participate they're big in the services sector, and because we're also services oriented. Jack Ma, for instance, one of the most successful e-commerce businesses, says the backbone of his business is women, and we know services grease the wheels of business sectors, but it's just, I think it's very difficult for women to get recognition when it comes to investing in their businesses. And even when it comes to how do you get strategy to market, access to markets is a really big challenge. So we like to see that the AfCFTA has actually set aside the financial prioritized financial services, transport, business, tourism, and communication. The question is, how do women really get to participate? And I think what we're seeing is that at the national level, women hold that area. But when it comes to the cross-border, the intra-Africa trade that we're looking at, as we've agreed, the percentage is something like 2%. So the question that I was in thinking about this presentation was, how do we change that? And I think it's important to look at some of the lived realities of women who are dealing with this. I think we cross-border traders, as we call them, informal cross-border traders, can teach us a lot as women in business, in the services business, how to dare to actually do this idea of going over the border to do business. Yes, I agree that technology has been really phenomenal, because when you see how a lot of training that was face-to-face suddenly had to go online, and because things are online now, it gives us the opportunity to be able to go to think about how we even do our businesses online. But I think, like anything, you also need to have recipients on both sides. That's why in interventions that we have, we're also looking at how do women in Tanzania, Zambia, Malawi, and South Africa come together to strategize about how they're going to do business together, because without recipient interest to support each other to do it, it's going to be difficult. I think we're saying that women are left behind, and there needs to be absolutely a deliberate intervention to get women to be able to even have the confidence that they don't need to just think local, they also need to think about the opportunities beyond their borders. I'll give an example quickly of some of the barriers that I think we know, but it's also good to just contextualize it in this discussion. The high cost of doing business. An example would be somebody like Nomsa, who runs a transport business in South Africa. She has permit to go to at least 3 SADC countries, but she can only go there one journey at a time. She's trying to get a permit that allows her to go to 3 countries or 4 countries, or maybe take one go from one place to the other. The problem is she has to really deal with this idea of third country party, a third country permit, which costs a lot of money. She's asked to get a contract, and it requires that you also secure a contract, maybe a 5-year contract, to be able to get the permit. Now, somebody like her, who is really doing kind of month-to-month kind of businesses, when you say that you need a 5-year contract, it's really a challenge for her. She's managed to secure a 5-year contract, but at the same time, when she goes to financiers to say, well, I've got the contract and I need funding to be able to buy the trucks to do the business, they will say, well, our mandate excludes transport and logistics. So I think in terms of some of the policies that we also have for the financial policies, the financial services policy, or even government strategy around industrialization, etc., we need to be thinking about how we really see this idea of services as being central to any industrialization processes. Because for as long as NOMSA is not able to get funding for her business, because everybody says that it's just not in our mandate to be able to support logistics and transport, it's very difficult for her to do that. I think also when we look at areas like tourism, and I'm really mentioning 2 areas where I think these 2 areas of tourism and transport at the moment, of course, communication, business services like marketing are all opportunities for women. But I think the idea of digitization, as we're talking about it right now, will be really an important avenue for women to think about how they do their businesses internally, nationally, but also how they go across the border with it. But I'll give an example also with tourism, for instance, that I think that there's a lot of interest for, say, South Africa to invite tourism practitioners into South Africa to give them experience, to go back to their countries and promote the South Africa to them in their country. But the challenge has been from some of the women we've spoken to is that the challenge is it's not reciprocated. And I think because the country's strategies are not aligned to say, if we invite you, you can also invite us. Often South Africa will say, well, if we invite them, in terms of inviting us, they ask us to pay for them to come. So it's a question of cost, but it's also a question of, are we really intentional that we can actually foster a collaboration where we do business and we even support tourism across the border with each other, but we have the same strategy to be able to cooperate and allow each other to see what it is that we have to offer. So as a result, I think a lot of African tourists will prefer to go to Europe or America rather than go to any other African country, because there isn't enough exposure of what Africa has to offer, or even how to experience Africa in its raw form. I mean, a lot of the perception is there's disease, there's this and that, but I think there's things for us to accept about ourselves and to be able to be proud of and to be able to work with each other despite some of the challenges that we have. I also just lastly want to really appeal to the fact that in most of the interventions that we have, women often talk about the lack of support. The lack of support that they need as they run their businesses. And I know this is a policy dialogue and we have to put it out there. Domestically, for women, we see that women who thrive have a lot of support at home with their partners. And we know that if they don't have support, it means that they often have to shift the burden of taking on the additional family support burdens, the additional family responsibility to their girl children. So I think as our male counterparts on this program and as we talk in these policy forums, let's really make sure that we are seeing the opportunity that women have. They work hard, they're good business women, but without the support of our male counterpart, it makes it really, really difficult for them to be able to also live this promise that they have to be able to support intra-Africa trade. My time is up and I'm going to pause there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Coco. I think all the guys who are on this platform have heard from our last speaker to support the women out there as much as possible. It starts from a household level, you know, for you to be able to influence support for women at an institutional level. If you don't have that mentality at a household level, it's difficult for you to see the need when you're, you know, at a decision-making level at a bigger institution. So I think next we will have our next speaker, Eliane, to take us through her presentation, which has to do with the Federation of Entrepreneurs for DRC, with a focus on agriculture.
Bonjour tout le monde. Bon voilà, d'abord je remercie la CEAC et ainsi que l'ITC pour l'opportunité qui m'offre pour la deuxième fois de parler du problème des femmes. Et donc j'ai compris que Émilie et Angela et puis Kunjoy ont mis l'accent, surtout Émilie et Angela, ils ont mis l'accent sur la technologie, les nouvelles technologies de l'information. Ce que je trouve vraiment bien, donc je ne voudrais plus revenir là-dessus, je voudrais directement passer sur le problème qui concerne la ZLECAf, c'est-à-dire je vais essayer d'expliquer comment la ZLECAf peut constituer une opportunité pour les femmes dans leur commerce intra-régional. Et surtout, ou plus encore, comment la ZLECAf peut contribuer à la promotion des chaînes de valeur. Et là, je vais rester beaucoup plus en Afrique centrale. Vous me suivez? Allô? Allô?
Yes.
Ah, OK. J'avais l'impression
I can hear.
I can hear. OK, thank you. Thank you. Alors, donc, voilà, je voulais d'abord parler de opportunités pour une femme entrepreneur en Afrique centrale. D'abord, je commencerai par dire une chose, que la ZLECAf, pour moi, ouvre l'Afrique sur elle-même. Comme vous savez, l'Afrique, c'est vrai, c'est un continent qui est, dont tout le monde parle de l'Afrique, mais malheureusement, quand on parle de l'Afrique centrale, précipitamment, l'image que l'Afrique centrale donne, c'est comme c'est des forêts et nous sommes tous étouffés dans cette forêt et on ne s'en sort pas. Et donc, moi, je me dis, effectivement, la ZLECAf est une opportunité, effectivement, pour nous. Et donc, nous devons saisir cette opportunité. Alors, les slides suivants, je parle de... Slide suivant, s'il vous plaît. Voilà. Voilà, c'est là où je parle des opportunités. Et donc, deuxièmement, je voudrais rester d'abord sur les opportunités, s'il vous plaît. S'il vous plaît, slide avant. Ok, restez là. Ok, merci beaucoup. Et donc là, je voudrais d'abord aussi parler de la ZLECAf comme un accélérateur de l'intégration régionale. Tout le monde parle de l'intégration régionale. Je crois que ça fait plus de 5 ou 10 ans qu'on parle de l'intégration régionale. Et ici, je voudrais parler de la femme. Je voudrais parler de la femme de l'Afrique centrale. Pourquoi l'intégration régionale ne marche pas? C'est mon point de vue. Donc, je voudrais partager un peu mon avis avec vous. Et ensuite, j'aimerais parler de la ZLECAf qui suscite la compétitivité. Et comme vous savez, la compétitivité est un problème très, très, très important pour la femme. Alors, pour cela, je pose la question suivante. Les femmes en Afrique centrale sont-elles prêtes au commerce intra-régional? Je dirais personnellement non. Et je vais expliquer pourquoi je dirais non. Parce qu'à mon avis, il y a la volonté politique des États membres. J'ai comme l'impression, contrairement à l'Afrique de l'Ouest ou de l'Est, l'Afrique centrale, les États membres ne font pas assez pour booster le commerce intra-régional. Il y a aussi les textes juridiques applicables aux États membres qui ne sont pas mis à jour, bien qu'à chaque réunion, tout le monde promet, mais malheureusement, ces textes ne sont pas mis à jour. Et un autre problème, je parlerai des obstacles à l'exportation par les femmes. Comme vous savez, le problème des femmes, il y a Angela et Kunjoy vient de dire, Émilie aussi a ajouté, il y a plusieurs obstacles, notamment les préjugés, notamment comment dire, les préjugés des hommes sur les femmes. Mais je pense qu'à mon sens, au jour d'aujourd'hui, les femmes, nous devons dépasser le problème des préjugés. Ils sont là. Effectivement, ce problème sont là. Effectivement, les hommes nous jugent sévèrement. Et comme l'a dit Kunjoy tout à l'heure, là où la femme doit travailler, là où un homme travaille 1 heure, la femme doit travailler 3 heures, 4 heures, 5 heures. Mais aujourd'hui, la plupart des femmes ont dépassé cela. Ils disent oui, le problème est là, mais nous allons contourner ce problème. Alors, pour les femmes, l'exportation ou le commerce intra-régional, le problème, je cite ici quelques problèmes, il y en a beaucoup, mais je ne peux pas prendre plus, c'est le manque de compétitivité. Les femmes ont peur de la compétition, de la concurrence. Elles ne font pas un effort. Deuxième problème, il y a un problème d'insécurité dans les frontières. Lorsque je prends la RDC, la frontière entre la RDC et le Rwanda ou la RDC et le Burundi, si je vous dis le nombre de problèmes que les femmes subissent, des viols, on confisque l'argent des femmes et les femmes se sentent en insécurité à pratiquer ces commerces. C'est vrai qu'entre le Cameroun, la RDC et le Cameroun, comme ça c'est loin, on ne peut pas parler des problèmes d'insécurité, mais plutôt je prends le Rwanda et le Burundi, là où les femmes pratiquent beaucoup plus le commerce transfrontalier. Alors, il y a la méconnaissance des processus et procédures des facilitations des échanges. Comme l'a dit les dames qui m'ont précédé et M. Amadou a mis l'accent aussi là-dessus, il a parlé des normes. Effectivement, c'est un problème, c'est un blocage majeur. Et ça, j'inviterai aux femmes de mettre l'accent beaucoup plus sur ce blocage-là aujourd'hui, puisque nous demandons à travailler, à être prises en compte. C'est vrai, nous ne demandons pas l'égalité, mais nous voulons tout simplement être prises en compte, être considérées, l'équité vis-à-vis des hommes. Et là, je demanderai, c'est l'occasion pour lancer l'appel aux femmes, en demandant aux femmes de travailler dur, de connaître les normes. Sans cela, nous pouvons crier, malheureusement, les hommes nous disent oui, c'est bon, mais vous devez avancer de vous-même. Et puis, il y a les faibles moyens financiers. Je crois que les 3 sœurs qui m'ont précédé ont parlé des faiblesses des moyens financiers, parce que vous conviendrez avec moi que lorsque quelqu'un veut se former, d'abord, il faut avoir le moyen. Et ces moyens-là, pour les femmes, ici, je parle de femmes qui habitent à l'arrière-pays. Cette femme-là a déjà de la peine pour manger. Et vous allez demander à cette femme de quitter là où elle habite pour aller suivre une formation payante, mais elle va vous dire, mais je n'ai déjà pas de quoi manger. Et où est-ce que je trouverai l'argent pour la formation? Et de ces obstacles, je me dis, nous devons envisager quelques pistes de solutions, mais j'ai un tableau avec des pistes. Mais là, je voudrais qu'il y ait une mise à niveau des compétences locales. Et là, c'est d'une manière générale, il faudra, pour l'exportation, pour le commerce intra-régional, hommes ou femmes, il faut une mise à niveau des compétences locales. Il faut aussi comprendre les processus et procédures de la facilitation des échanges. Là, c'est un problème qui constitue un blocage tant pour les hommes que pour les femmes. Aussi, je trouve, puisque nous devons faire une mise à jour des compétences, puisque nous devons former les gens, je pense que nous devons identifier le produit phare en Afrique centrale. Là, je parle en Afrique centrale. Pourquoi? Parce que lorsque vous prenez les quelques pays de l'Afrique centrale tels que je connais, vous verrez surtout en agriculture, nous avons pratiquement les mêmes cultures, les mêmes produits que nous cultivons et que nous vendons. Et donc, c'est là où le problème de la compétitivité se pose. Malheureusement, quand vous regardez, nous assistons aux foires en Afrique centrale, on regarde les produits des femmes provenant du champ ou de la transformation, c'est là où on va voir la grande différence. Et donc, nous avons besoin que si nous voulons vraiment aller utiliser la ZLECAf comme une opportunité, surtout en ce qui concerne les produits agricoles, je pense qu'il serait mieux que chaque pays puisse identifier ce que j'appelle le produit phare, c'est-à-dire ces produits-là, même si on le trouve au Cameroun, mais en RDC, on produit beaucoup plus de ces produits. D'autres qu'on trouve au Rwanda, le Rwanda produit la meilleure qualité et donc dans les commerces, essayer d'organiser les femmes de manière à ce que chaque pays puisse présenter des produits phares, ce qui ferait l'objet d'une réunion. C'est vrai, aujourd'hui, on ne peut pas se déplacer, mais avec le temps, une réunion pareille où les femmes ou les associations des femmes viendraient avec des produits phares de chaque pays et on pourra juger de nous-mêmes, avoir l'honnêteté de dire que non, par exemple, dans tel pays, le manioc est meilleur qu'en RDC. Dans ces cas-là, pour le commerce transfrontalier ou le commerce régional, nous privilégions ces pays-là. Et donc, pour cela, si on peut aller les slides suivants, je parle de recommandations. Slide suivant, s'il vous plaît. Next. Next, please. Voilà. Et donc, oui, voilà, ici. Donc, moi, je préfère m'appesantir plus sur ces tableaux. Parce que dans ces tableaux, j'ai essayé de faire des propositions parce que je ne voudrais plus énumérer et faire le diagnostic de problèmes des femmes parce que mes 3 sœurs qui m'ont précédé ont été vraiment assez précis, je les ai suivies royalement et donc je voudrais aller directement aux actions, les objectifs de ces actions, les résultats et l'impact de ces actions. Pour moi, c'est vraiment ce qui est important. Alors, je dirais, première action, la formation et les conférences. Donc, je trouve que l'accès aux formations pour faire le commerce, les femmes déjà dans chaque pays doivent apprendre d'abord à faire ce que j'appelle le commerce national, c'est-à-dire prendre le produit d'un pays, d'une province, du même pays et les vendre dans l'autre. Je donne un exemple en RDC. Comme vous savez, c'est un pays qui a 26 provinces aujourd'hui. Je vous dis qu'il y a des femmes d'une province, je prends l'exemple à l'Équateur, ne savent pas qu'est-ce que c'est le fromage. Ils ne savent pas quels sont les produits agricoles qui sont utilisés, cultivés dans telle province. Pour vous dire, puisque j'ai fait le tour de la RDC 3 fois, dans les cadres de l'encadrement des femmes de la Fédération des entreprises du Congo, et j'ai trouvé cette réalité et j'ai trouvé ça une aberration qu'une femme qui se trouve, les 2 femmes qui se trouvent dans la même province, ils ne savent pas les produits qui sont de l'autre côté, qui se vendent ou qui se produisent de l'autre côté. Voilà pourquoi moi, je suis en train pour le moment, chaque année, de demander les femmes dans chaque province d'organiser des foires nationales ou de commerce national. Donc, ils prennent de commerce ou importation ou exportation, je dirais, nationale. C'est pour se faire connaître, pour comprendre le produit des autres. Une fois que la femme a appris déjà à sortir sa marchandise dans une province pour l'envoyer dans une autre par avion, il apprend déjà la moindre des choses, il sait déjà quels sont les documents, les LTA qu'il doit avoir pour transférer les produits. Et automatiquement, une fois qu'elle comprend, elle a pris goût. Et ça sera facile de prendre le produit en RDC et d'aller le vendre dans un autre pays africain comme le Cameroun. Alors, l'objectif, c'est de renforcer les capacités et la confiance en soi des femmes. Angela, ou je ne sais pas moi, quelqu'un d'autre l'a dit, effectivement, les femmes ont peur. Par moments, bien qu'elles...
Madame Eliane?
Yes?
You might want to wrap up. We are over our 2 hours that we had said that we want to have this meeting for. My apologies for this.
I can hear the translation in French. Oui, je vous entends maintenant. Dites-moi.
Oh, yes. I was saying we are over the 2 hours that we had been allocated for this meeting. My apologies. You might want to wrap up. You might want to conclude.
OK. Merci beaucoup. Donc, je vais m'appesantir seulement sur les actions. Les restes, puisque le tableau est là devant vous, on pourra traduire ou transmettre mes recommandations à d'autres. Donc, il y a la formation. Et puis, je propose aussi organiser des foires provinciales, justement, pour échange de produits. Et je mets l'accent sur les réseautages. Les dames qui m'ont précédé m'ont rendu déjà un service. Ils ont parlé des réseautages, c'est-à-dire pousser les femmes à ne pas travailler entre elles seulement et adhérer dans des fédérations patronales, les chambres de commerce, les associations de plateformes pour apprendre beaucoup plus parce qu'on échange en écoutant, en voyant les autres. Ma 4e recommandation, c'est faire le partenariat. Et c'est là où je rejoins encore mes prédécesseurs en parlant de partenariat entre les ministères, le gouvernement et la coopération. Et c'est là où les CER doivent jouer un rôle auprès des associations parce que les associations de femmes veulent bien encadrer, mais si elles n'ont pas le moyen d'action, ça sera très difficile d'encadrer les femmes. Et puis, pour terminer, ma 5e recommandation, je parlerai de l'organisation de femmes au niveau national, c'est-à-dire regrouper des femmes. Je mets l'accent là-dessus sur les filières, c'est-à-dire les femmes dans chaque pays doivent savoir la filière agriculture, élevage, pêche, transformation, service, comme l'a dit Angela. Donc, pour conclure, next slide, please. Donc, pour conclure, justement, c'est ce que je voulais dire tout à l'heure. Nous, en RDC, nous travaillons déjà ce qu'on appelle les commerces extérieurs. Nous l'appliquons déjà au niveau national. Mais comme je l'ai dit tout à l'heure, nous devons mettre l'accent, nous devons nous regrouper pour essayer de travailler en réseau. Et là, je fais appel à la CEAC pour ce qui concerne les chaînes des valeurs de produits agricoles. Je demande à la CAC de vraiment prendre le temps vraiment de regrouper ou d'accompagner les associations des femmes pour préparer les femmes à la compétitivité, à l'innovation. Et enfin, on pourra parler des chaînes de valeur parce que pour parler des chaînes de valeur, il faut d'abord que les femmes puissent avoir les terres. Si la femme n'a déjà pas de terre, là, la chaîne est coupée. Et donc, si la femme a déjà sa terre à elle, parce que dans certains pays africains, même de l'Afrique centrale, l'accès aux terres pose encore problème pour les femmes. Donc, une bonne chaîne de valeur, pour moi, agricole, je vais dire, commence d'abord par avoir la terre, cultiver, et à partir de là, tu peux passer à l'autre filière, d'où j'insiste sur la nécessité d'avoir des filières, c'est-à-dire les associations regroupent les membres par filière et ces filières-là peuvent devenir demain des coopératives, donc coopératives agricoles, coopératives de pêche, coopératives élevage. À ce moment-là, on pourra parler d'une bonne chaîne des valeurs. La personne qui a fait le fruit, qui a cultivé le fruit, va prendre ses fruits, va le vendre, et une autre personne va transformer le fruit en fruits séchés. Il va prendre le fruit séché, il peut aller faire le commerce dans un autre pays qui n'a pas le même fruit. Donc, voilà un peu, parce que je n'ai pas beaucoup de temps, quand on parle la dernière, on a des avantages et des inconvénients. L'avantage, c'est que celles qui m'ont précédé ont pratiquement dit ce que j'ai mis dans ma présentation. Les désavantages, c'est qu'on ne peut pas beaucoup parler. D'où j'ai mis quelques images, vous verrez. C'est pour vous illustrer un peu le travail qui est fait par les femmes en RDC. Il y a des vidéos pour vous montrer tout ce que je viens de dire. Nous les pratiquons maintenant, mais à un niveau, à une échelle moindre. C'est-à-dire, nous ne pouvons pas aller au-delà parce qu'on le fait avec le moyen de bord. Il y a la BAD qui nous accompagne, il y a quelques institutions au niveau national qui nous accompagnent, mais on aimerait bien avoir la CER, les CER, pardon, donc la communauté économique régionale, précisément la CEAC, qui vraiment montre qu'il s'engage, c'est-à-dire qui s'implique, je vais dire, dans l'organisation des réseaux des femmes entrepreneurs en Afrique centrale. Je vous remercie.
Thank you very much, Madam Eliane, for the elaborate presentation. Colleagues, I'd like to apologize for going over the 2 hours that we had slated this meeting for. We've lost a couple of participants, and I would like to appeal to you to stick around for possibly a further 10-15 minutes. This will basically be a question and answer session. I'm sure quite a number of you will benefit from this. So I will take a few questions, possibly three max. You can raise your hand on the platform, and then we can recognize you. You can ask your question either to any of the experts you indicated, any of the experts you may wish to ask the question to, and then they can answer the question. Very brief, please. But before we do that, we have a quick poll that we want to give you guys so that you can respond to that. So if you can see a pop-up on your screen, you can quickly respond to that poll, and it will take I think less than a minute to complete. And please feel free to raise your hand, and we'll recognize you. We'll take possibly a maximum of 3 questions, and we'll have answer. We can take all 3 questions, and then we'll have all 3 answers from the respective experts, and then we'll close this session. Thank you. I'm sure my colleagues will give the results of the poll before we close this session. I think colleagues, you can ask, you can raise your hand and we can recognize you. Raise your hand and we can recognize you, and you can ask any question that you may have. I see no hands being raised, meaning that it has been a quite informative session. And I would like to thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for making time to to participate in this dialogue. The role of women in trade policymaking is very imperative. And I would want to remind you that this is not the end. We still have one more day left tomorrow. And please join us again tomorrow as we discuss further with regards to the role of women in trade policy making. Tomorrow, which is day 3, we'll focus on stakeholder engagement in trade policy dialogue, and we'll hear from the RECs themselves, the REC representatives, to say how can we be as inclusive as possible with regards to trade policy. Tomorrow's session will start at 1500 hours East African time, and we'll send a reminder to everyone via email. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for being part of this webinar, and we thank you again because we believe that tomorrow you will be part of us, and thank you very much for the responses. Thank you very much for being active on the chat. We really appreciate all the information that you're giving us. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Merci.
Good evening for everyone. Good day, basically.
Bye-bye.
Merci beaucoup. À demain. See you tomorrow. Thank you. Thank you all.
No problem. Bye. Bye.